Miketz, Rishon. In today's Chumash, we're going to learn about how Pari had two dreams. In his first dream, Pari saw 7 robust cows coming from the Yaor, from the Nile River, followed by 7 weak cows, and these weak cows devoured the 7 robust cows. In the second dream, he saw 7 healthy ears of grain, and they were devoured by 7 scoury ears of grain. Now, even though it was obvious that Pari's dream had something to say about Mitzrayim's economy, none of Pari's advisors were able to explain the dreams. At that point, Sar HaMashkim tells Pari, recalls how Yosef had correctly interpreted his dream, and then he tells Pari, and Pari summons Yosef. That's going to be today's Chumash. Perek Mem Aleph, the pasuk says, Vayihi, and it was Mikesh Nosayim Yomim, at the end of 2 years. In other words, at the end of 2 years, an extra 2 years that Yosef was in prison, because as Rashi told us last week, Yosef put his trust in the Sar HaMashkim instead of the Eibishter, and the Eibishter gave him a decree that he has to be another 2 years in prison. So Vayihi Mikesh Nosayim Yomim, it was after 2 years, at the end of 2 years. Ufari Chaylim, Pari had a dream, and there was standing at the river Nile. Rashi says, as the Targum says, mi seif, at the end of. Whenever seifu. Miketz means, when you have this expression in Torah, means the end of. So the end of 2 years. Al ha'yor, by the river, kol shar nahores enim kruyim yoirim chutz minilas. All other rivers are not called Yair, only the Nile. Why? Because the entire land of Mitzrayim is made up of man-made rivers, with the Nile flowing into them and filling them up. So since rain does not fall regularly in Mitzrayim as it does in other countries, and it gets its rain from the Nile. So, standing by the river, by the Nile, and pasuk beis v'hinei min hayaor oilos sheva porois yifos mara uvrios basar, and there were 7 fine-looking, robust cows emerging from the river, and they pastured in the swamp, in the marsh. Or yifos mara, Rashi says, fine-looking. Simen huli meha seva. This is a siman of years of plenty. When people appear fine and favorably to each other, people do not regard each other with envy, because everybody has. Ba'achu, Rashi says, ba'agam, this is a swamp, this is a marsh. Mrishik belaz kamay yiske ochu. In French, it's called a can marsh, flourish without water. Pasuk Gimel, V'hinei Sheva Poris Acheres Oilos Achareim and Ayar, and there were another 7 cows emerging from the river. Rois Mara V'dakis Basar, they were poor looking and thin. Atamayne Eitza Poris Asfas Ayar, and they stood next to the other cows by the river bank. V'dakis Basar, Rashi says, Lashon Dak, this is thin. Pasuk Dalet, V'techalna Poris Rois Amaris V'dakis Basar, the poor looking thin cows then ate the 7 looking healthy cows. They ate the 7 healthy cows. Vayikas Pari, and Pari got up. Rashi says, "Vatechana simin shtei kol simchas asova nishkachas b'imei." This is going to be a simin, an indication that all the joy of the years of plenty will be forgotten in the days of famine. Pasuk Hey, Vayishan v'yachalim shenis. Pari slept and he dreamt another dream. V'hinei sheva shibalim elis b'kona echad brios teves. There were 7 ears of corn rising on one stalk. They were healthy and good ones. Pasuk says, Bakona tudel belaz brios. It's a tudel in Old French, or sinis in Old French. Pasuk vav, v'hinei sheva shibalam dakas ushutuva is kadim. And then there were 7 thin ears of corn, soimches achareyan, sprouting after them. So Rashi says, ushutuvas hashidush belaz shkof and kidum. This is beaten. Chavuto is loshen mashke v'chovet tomel alidei adela samake. Beaten ones from the east wind, the same root as mashiv, lintel, which is beaten by the door when it hits it. Kodam ruach mizrachis shekeden. This is an eastern wind which is called bisha, bais in Old French. Pasik Zayim, Vativlana Ashibolim Hadakis. The thin ears then swallowed Sheva Ashibolim, the 7 healthy ones. Habriyos Vamaleyos, the healthy, wholesome ears. Vayikas Pari V'Nechalem, Pari woke and he had a dream. Pasik Zayin Habriyos Shanim Balaz V'Nechalem V'Hine Nishtam Chalim Shalim the fun of Hutzach Lepeistam. What does that mean? And it was a dream. It means now a whole dream was complete before him, and therefore he needed to have an interpretation. Pasik Ches, Vayihi Ba'Boiker Batipoim Rucha. In the morning he felt very agitated. He called all the sorcerers and the wise people of Mitzrayim. Pari told him his dream, but no one could interpret it according to the way that Pari understood it to mean. So Rashi Batipoim Ruche, what does that mean? Umetarfa Ruche, which means he felt he felt agitated. His spirit beat with him like a bell. Nebuchadnezzar uses the expression "Vatispoem ruchei." It says the expression "Vatispoem ruchei." Why? The fee, and why does it say "Vatipoem ruchei"? The fee sham shtei peimais, because he had 2 reasons to be agitated. Number 1, shichas achaleim, he forgot that he had a dream, and the concealment of the interpretation. This is a contraction of words of hanechorim b'timei mesim, which means sheshelim ba'atzomis. They inquire from the bones of the dead. Timei atzmis b'loshen arami. Timei are bones in Aramaic. With Mishnah and in Mishnayis, bayis shumali timaya is a house that is full of timaya. Mali atzama is full of bones. There's no one that can interpret the pare. So Rashi says, there were interpreters. However, but not for pare. There were words were not heard by him, and he was not content with their interpretation. They would say, you're going to have 7 daughters. You're going to bury 7 daughters. Pasuk test. And the chief wine butler then said to Pari, saying, today I recall my sin. And he says, Pari became very angry with his servants. He put me in prison. In the house of the chief butcher. Me and the baker. Yud Aleph. I and he had a dream on the same night. Each having a dream that fitted his interpretation. Which means each of us dreamed a dream which fitted the interpretation that was given to us, and it made a lot of sense. Then he says, with us there was an Ivri child, Eved l'sar tabachim, he was a servant to the chief butcher. We told him our dreams and he interpreted it for us. Each he interpreted it for each of us befitting to the dream. Rashi says, what does he mean by saying nar ivri of eved? Arudim marishayim shentevas mishleimim. Cursed, the wicked are cursed, for even the good that they do is not complete. Shemaskir b'lashon bizoyin. They when they mention good, it's in a way of disgrace. Nar, when he said that Yosef is nar, means sheitim in aroy l'gdula. He's a fool. He's unsuitable for high position. Ivri, he's Ivri afilu l'sheinene nemak. He doesn't even know Egyptian. Eved, what does it mean? He's a servant. It's written in the protocol of Mitzrayim that a servant cannot become a ruler nor wear the robes of nobility. Pasik Yud Gimel Vayik Asher Pasar Lanu Kein Haya, as just as he interpreted, so it happened. Oisi Heshev Al Kani V'Oisi Sala, Pare reinstated my position, while the baker he hanged. Rashi says Heshev Al Kani Pare and Nisker Lamaila K'Meishomer Pare Katzaf Alavadav. He refers to Pare, as mentioned before, as the wine butler said to Pare, became angry in his servants. Hare Mikra Lashon Kotzer, it's very short. Like Pirish Meheshev, it does not say who reinstated. Lefisha Ein Tzarech Lefarish Meheshev, you should be Yad Lahashav Hu Pare, because it's obvious that it was Pare. Chindera Kol Mikrois Tzarim. And so is the case of these psukim. Amisha olav asis heim says mitzvarav, something which is obvious to do an action the Torah does not say. Pasuk Gimel Vayikasher Pasuk Dal Vayishtach Pare V'Ikres. Yosef took a haircut and they changed his clothing. Vayavi Pare and came to Pare. Rashi min haber min beis asar shu osik min guma, which means the pit. It's like a pit. V'chein kol bar shu mikra lashon gumahu. Every bar in Torah means pit. V'chein afim in mayim karu bar. Even if there's no water, it's called a pit. Vayigalach. Why did they give him a haircut?